I'm recording this video about 6 months into understanding about neuroplasticity, and I just want to remind everybody that I am not a doctor or certified health coach, so please seek appropriate medical attention from certified physicians. This is not a replacement for real medical care. So I know that this was working for me, neuroplasticity, and starting to heal me, because there were a few signs very early on after I started these brain retraining programs. One of my first signs within the first week of doing these visualizations was I caught my first cold in years. I had been telling doctors for a very long time that I was not catching any kind of illness. My kids would come home with the flu and I wouldn't catch it. And that was pretty much ignored by most people. It sounds like a positive thing, but I knew that something was off, something was wrong. And so within the first week, I got a fever and a cold, and I celebrated. I laid in bed that night thinking, this feels so normal. And after that, I started having more positive experiences. Little by little, my sensitivities to smells, scents, things like detergent and chemicals started to decrease to, what a normal person would experience. And then after that, I would say within about 3 months, I started to be able to eat more foods. And I can't express how huge all of these hurdles were. I was previously reacting so severely to all of these things in the environment and foods that I could pretty much not leave my house. And I was in intense pain, migraines, dizziness, head and heart pounding constantly. And that's because the nervous system affects all of those areas in our bodies. So I want to start this video out by giving you hope and telling you why I know that this was working. So where am I now and what's gotten me to this point? I have been studying neuroplasticity and doing the brain retraining programs for about 6 months now. And what got me there was about 5 years ago, I started getting worse symptoms, migraines. My ears were feeling like they were blowing up. It's very hard to describe. Dizziness, and I couldn't pinpoint anything. I started getting diagnosed with all of these different things, went to every specialist imaginable, including naturopathic doctors and functional medicine doctors. And I am absolutely not downplaying real medical care. There is 100% a place for it, and it is absolutely necessary. So if you need to, please seek out, certified medical attention when you need it. The purpose of this is to explain that this is also something to be considered. I just wasn't getting answers, and it was getting worse. My food intolerances started with gluten and dairy. I would get the symptoms. I gave those up, and then everything vanished. I almost felt completely, quote unquote, normal again. I mean, I've always kind of been a sickly person, but not to that extent. And then about 6 months after I discovered my gluten and dairy intolerance, I started losing foods one by one, intolerance to one thing. It led to the same symptoms after eating the next month, and it just spiraled down. And what I learned through reading about neuroplasticity is that it's very common in many different type of disorders. Fibromyalgia, for example, or multiple chemical sensitivity. People will notice that it starts out small or as one thing and starts increasing. And that's because our brain starts to wire as this deep-rooted connection, and it takes less of a trigger or whatever is causing it to give you the symptoms. And so when I was listening to testimonials of people who had started to rewire these deep ingrained neurons, it started giving me hope. And I just explained before how I knew I was starting to get better. At the 6-month point now, I actually had a really bad relapse, and what happened was COVID hit. I'm a mom. I'm taking care of the kids by myself, having to homeschool them. I just wasn't having the time to do this self-care, to do the visualizations. I had to completely change up our whole routine. And it caused a lot of changes and a lot of stress. And that's what started putting me into a decline. I also panicked about it and started trying all these other treatments again when they probably just upped my fight or flight response. And I should have just been focusing on calming down my nervous system as best as I could through this time. I know that a lot of people can probably relate to that. As parents, we're responsible for taking care of other people. And so right now, unfortunately, I'm still in the relapse. I am in tons of pain. I went back to not being able to eat anything at all. And every day is a struggle. I wake up and my head is pounding and I have all of these different symptoms. But the thing that gives me hope, and the thing that should give all of you hope, is that clearly this was working. Clearly this was the answer. If all of a sudden I was able to eat all of those foods again, if you think about it realistically and rationally, there's no way that I'm just allergic to every food that exists. It makes logical sense that my brain was wiring that way. So doing the visualizations and making time, I am at the point now where I'm making no excuse for myself. And I've had to change around my routine a lot. It's not always easy. I have a 4-year-old who wakes me up 6 times a night sometimes. You know, sometimes my kids are arguing all day, and even though I'm proud of myself for getting myself into this healing environment initially, I would be lying if I said that this wasn't really hard. So when I say that I understand, if you're going through something similar, I get it. A lot of people have given me advice like, do it during this time, do it during naps, showers. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And what I'm trying to do right now is guide myself to realize that my best is the best that I can do. So anytime I can find time, I try to. Maybe it's when they haven't woken up in the morning yet. Maybe it's after they go to bed, even if my 4-year-old comes and gets me a lot. Any little bit that I can get in, that's what I'm gonna do, because I deserve to live a life full of health and know what it's like to have a body in homeostasis. So that's where I am at right now. I wanted to share this because it's realistic. I'm not better yet, and I know that it's possible. But if you're feeling this way at all, know that there are times when I can't explain the state of my body that it's in right now. If anybody else was in this body, I think they would think, how is this person existing right now? What's keeping me going is knowing that we have answers. We have the ability to calm down our nervous system no matter what our situations are, and that other people understand this and that I understand it. So if you're feeling this way at all, you're not alone. I will update you as soon as I feel like something has changed majorly that I want to report. But I have to say, I'm going to celebrate every small victory that I can, whether it's a minute of peace to myself or something that's started to change in a breakthrough in my illness. So I'm sending love and peace and healing to everybody.